Okay, I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture the most important, most sacred book in an entire civilization. Now imagine that same book is also the most forbidden one. A book that could get you killed just for owning it, just for reading it in your own language. It's a crazy contradiction, right? Well, that's exactly the story we're going to get into. So, back in the early 1500s, you have this scholar, William Tyndale, and he says this to a powerful clergyman. I mean, think about the nerve. He's basically saying, I'm going to make sure the average farm boy knows the Bible better than you do, Mr. High and Mighty. He was promising to completely bypass the entire religious establishment. Now, this wasn't just some brave boast. It was a promise that would literally cost him his life. And that's the big question here, isn't it? Why? Why was this a death sentence? For almost 1,000 years, why was the most important book in Europe kept under lock and key, like it was some kind of weapon they were terrified of people actually reading?
Well, this control wasn't an accident. It was a really carefully built system. First off, you had the language barrier. The official Bible, the Latin Vulgate, was in a language that, let's be real, 99% of people couldn't read. So right there, it's a closed book. Second, the church had a total monopoly on what it meant. Only they could interpret it for you. And finally, if that wasn't enough, you had the Inquisition. By the 1200s, owning a Bible in your own language was officially heresy. And the punishment for heresy? Death.
So, what was inside this book that was so dangerous? It wasn't just about challenging a few church rules. No, it was about the ideas. Ideas so powerful they could unravel the entire fabric of the world. Let's dig into the first one, which might just be the most explosive of them all.
On one side, you have the world as it was, a rigid pyramid. You've got nobles on top, ruling by divine right, women are under the authority of men, and slaves, well, slaves were legally considered res, that's Latin for things, property. And then, on the other side, you get this one sentence from the Apostle Paul, there is neither slave nor free, for you are all one. That one sentence doesn't just question the whole system, it completely obliterates it. It declares every single person, from the king to the slave, equal in ultimate worth. And you know what? The powers that be, they noticed this from the very beginning. Way back in the 2nd century, this Roman philosopher Celsus was mocking Christianity for this exact reason. He basically said, look at this silly religion for women, children, and slaves. He was insulting it because it appealed to the lowest people in society. But here's the incredible part. His insult was the entire point. What Celsus saw as a weakness was actually the source of its revolutionary power. It gave dignity to people the world had written off as worthless. And it was all based on this core theological idea, the imago Dei, the belief that every single human being is made in the image of God. Okay, so if that first idea threatened the whole social order, this next one, man, this one was a direct shot at the heart of the religious institution itself. It was the idea that you don't need a gatekeeper to get to God. You see, the medieval church had built this whole complex system. You couldn't just be forgiven. Oh no, you had to go to a priest, confess to him, do whatever penance he told you to do, and then get absolution from him. And on top of that, you could buy something called an indulgence to, shave some time off in purgatory. This gave the church unbelievable psychological and financial power over everybody. But then, people could finally read the book for themselves. And they're finding passages like this. A simple, direct promise from Jesus himself. Whoever believes in me shall live. That's it. No complicated steps, no required middleman. This became the core of the idea of the priesthood of all believers. The notion that anyone, you, me, anyone, could stand directly before God. And people paid the ultimate price to spread that idea. Look at this. John Wycliffe. They were so mad at him, they dug up his bones decades after he died and burned them. Jan Hus was burned at the stake. And the story goes he was singing hymns while the flames engulfed him. And William Tyndale, our man who wanted the plowboy to know scripture, they strangled him and then burned his body. This was not some abstract debate. This was a fight to the death.
So you have to ask, why? Why such a brutal, violent reaction? It wasn't just about protecting some obscure doctrine. It was about protecting an entire system, a whole empire built on 4 very deep, very real fears.
Think of it like this. A Bible that everyone could read threatened the entire medieval operating system. It threatened their theological power as the only gatekeepers to God. It threatened their massive economic empire. It threatened their political power over kings. And it threatened the very social order of lords and peasants that held everything together. And let's just pause on the economic stakes for a second, because this number is staggering. At its peak, the church owned about 30% of all the land in Western Europe. This wasn't just a church, it was the largest, wealthiest landowner on the entire continent.
So, how'd they make all that money? Well, you get absolutely shameless sales pitches like this one from an indulgence seller named Johann Tetzel. It sounds crude, but that was literally the business model. Salvation was being monetized. And a book that says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils? Yeah, that's a pretty direct threat to your entire business. Then you have the political fear. I mean, there's a famous story from 1077 where the Pope made the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV stand barefoot in the snow for 3 days just to beg for forgiveness. That's real power. The papacy could humble kings. But then people start reading the Gospels, and they find Jesus saying stuff like, "My kingdom is not of this world." Suddenly, the justification for a pope bossing around emperors looks pretty shaky.
For centuries, the church pretty much managed to keep a lid on all these dangerous ideas. But then, right around the early 1500s, two things came together at the perfect moment, and the dam just broke. It unleashed a flood that changed everything.
The first was the theological weapon. A guy named Martin Luther started championing this principle called sola scriptura, which is just Latin for scripture alone. The idea was simple but revolutionary. The Bible is the ultimate authority, higher than any pope, any council, any church tradition. It was a direct assault on the church's claim to be the sole source of truth.
And the second piece was the technological weapon, Gutenberg's printing press. This was the real game changer. Suddenly, you couldn't control information anymore. A book that used to take a single monk a full year to copy by hand could now be printed hundreds, even thousands of times. The church's physical monopoly on the book was just gone.
You can think of it like this. Releasing the Bible to the people in their own languages, it was like making the source code for the entire medieval operating system public. For the very first time, anybody could open it up, look at the code, find the bugs, and start writing a whole new program for civilization. And that really brings us right up to today, doesn't it? For 1,000 years, the most powerful institution on Earth tried to keep this book locked up because they knew, they were right, that its ideas were revolutionary. Which leaves us with a pretty challenging question. Is the book any less dangerous today, or have we maybe just stopped reading it?